Hello, everyone. Before we begin this open world dialogue, I want to quickly point out something that you may not know about, which is WIGI's Affiliates and Allies program. So if you're interested in learning more about running charity streams with dedicated support and social visibility, then I advise you to come join us. What you can do is contact us at affiliates _ allies, affiliates _ allies at getwiggy.com, and join our Discord by heading over to our Twitch channel at GetWiggy and join us from there. All right, let's dive right in. So, allyship and diversity are vital to gaming and tech's growth, health, and future. Being an ally and advocating for diversity in these settings may be accomplished in a number of ways, but it takes effort to put systems and people in place that will really make those goals a reality. Streamline Studios appointed 2 new directors recently to take charge of global strategic initiatives and expand the company's activities worldwide. While this is a progressive step, not all studios actively seek to hire women for executive roles or practice what they preach. So how did these 2 directors navigate allyship and diversity in their careers? How are they promoting and growing the industry from the inside? And what does it take truly to center diversity and inclusion in the gaming industry? Our 2 experts will shed light on these questions by providing an insider perspective on the effects of allyship and diversity at all levels of the workplace. I'm Robin, and this is Open World Dialogue sponsored by Maximum Games. So up first, we have our first panelist, Yeji Oh. Originally from South Korea, Yeji graduated with a degree in biomedical sciences before joining the games industry. She has experience and overseen the game development production process from the inner workings as a Korean translator, let me be specific, project manager, and most recently, division director working on various initiatives across the organization and on special projects such as helping the new Colombian studio scale up and achieve its goals. Yeji actively shares her career insight through speaker sessions at international game development conferences, including Nordic Games, Level Up KL, Games Industry Live, and GDC. She also supports organizations that guide young people and women in games, including career sessions with universities and schools and mentorships with, of course, WIGI. And last but not least, we have Lalitha Krishnan. Lalitha joined Streamline Studios at a pivotal point of growth in 2015. She has managed HR and operations through a company employee growth from 86 to over 250 people worldwide, opened 3 international studios, and navigated Streamline's team through the global pandemic into one of Streamline's most successful years to date. Originally from Malaysia, Lalitha started her career in finance and operations. However, her love of video games saw her seek a role at Streamline Studios, where she found her passion for human resources and operations. Lalitha has successfully implemented employee recruitment and retainment initiatives, including government relations, learning and development programs, and corporate strategic planning. And her commitment to continuous learning, Lalitha is currently pursuing an MBA at University Technology Malaysia. Thank you both for being here. I'm so excited. One of the things that has always been central in my life is diversity, equity, inclusion, and allyship. If you don't have that, I don't think anything, even gaming and tech, it wouldn't work. So I think one of the most important things that we need to start off with is a foundational question. I want to know, and I'm sure everybody else wants to know, could you start out just by telling us about your career journey and what you currently do at Streamline specifically? Get into it, because saying what your titles are, at least for an outsider like me, is daunting. So tell me about your career journey, and then what do you do currently at Streamline?
Okay, thanks, Robin, for the introduction. Wow, that was an introduction. Like I couldn't have, I couldn't have explained my life better than you did. Thank you so much, and thanks so much for having us here. I'm super excited. I've always been a big fan of WIGI. Streamline is too, and we always find ways to work together, and love that. So thanks again for having us. To jump right into it, I started in the video games career as an outsider looking in. First job is what most people would typically not call as game developer, Korean translator. I get sidetracked, but we have a tendency of only calling those who are directly involved in the actual day-to-day making of production as developers. But in reality, everyone involved in the process, whether it's in HR, marketing, IT, they're all game developers. At least that's my view on it. As you kindly explained, I don't have a games background originally. I studied medical sciences. Actually didn't finish my degree. You said I graduated, but I didn't. I just wanted to make that super clear. I jumped into games because I was hooked. I originally only wanted to start a job as a part-time translator thing. I wasn't really a gamer from the start either, but when I met the people and seemed really excited and passionate about their jobs, and for me, coming from corporate backgrounds, and none of this was what I was expecting from a job, and that really got me intrigued, and that's what hooked me in, and what made me stay in the industry is just how much ability the video games technology has in terms of just economic growth and giving people opportunities regardless of your background. If you have the skills, you're able to work here, and I love that so much, and that's why I stayed in games for, I think it's approaching 8 years. I never imagined I would, but yeah, so that's a little bit of the background. What I currently do is I work on various initiatives. It's just basically just helping people troubleshoot and fix things as they go, different teams. Oftentimes in games, things move so quickly, it's really hard to take a breath and just take a step back and take a look at your processes, take a look at what you're doing to see, does this still make sense? Are you doing things the most efficient way? So I'm there to help them just take that step back and take a look at what can we improve to make things happen. And also, as you mentioned, I'm currently focusing and helping the new Colombia studio. We have an exciting new studio that incorporated in Colombia. And I'm here to make sure that that studio can grow and hire as many talents as possible so that we can give it as many opportunities to people and talents all over the world as intended. So that's my job. I would say it's a fun, super privileged job, and I love it every day.
Awesome.
All right, so thank you, Yaji. You just put it very beautifully. And thank you, Robbie, for giving us such a beautiful introduction. So, like Yaji said, I think, it's better said in that way. Like, just make me like rewind my years of in Streamline. Like, it's going to be like 8 years as well. So that's a long journey. So I'm slightly different from what Yaji coming from. So my background, I actually already have a different employment before the gaming industry, which is I was in the banking industry. So I was in finance with a bit, and then that's when I wanted to change my career at the point, and then I got the opportunity. I always play games. I always play mobile games. Candy Crush, of course, like that's one of those mobile games that have been famous. And I never thought that in Malaysia actually there is a studio, and that's how I don't have the knowledge that there is a gaming industry or like a gaming company that actually I can pursue as a career. And that's how I started the journey here as operations, and I started to work as a operation associate. We were managing facilities and also looking after the studios, and also working closely with the HR department to work with the employee engagements as years goes. And then I moved to be in a HR department, and slowly we built. So we started as 2 people in a HR department, and now I can say that we have 11 people in a team globally. That's how we have been growing even in the HR. And I'm very happy, and what I really love being in a HR department was that we get the opportunity to actually make something different in people's life. And I realized that being in Streamline, that was the first step that how much I enjoy being with people, connecting with people, and love how everyone's here in Streamline that you care with each other. And that's what makes more strong feelings, that why I still want to be here and do things for them. And being in HR, you get the privilege to work more closely with everyone from various departments, and that helped me to learn a lot as well. As of now, I'm actually just recently promoted to be a director of studio operations. So I'm working closely with managing director to run the company's productions headquarters in Kuala Lumpur. So currently I'm actually based in Malaysia. And what I will do is that we are jointly responsible to actually for strategic planning and scaling the business operations over here, and also helping with the other studios internationally in terms of like when it comes to like global human resources or how to head up studios as well. Yeah.
Awesome. I think two things that just popped up from what both of you just said is, one, you've been with Streamline for a very long time. So people out there, you're watching this, there are places that are not toxic. You can actually stay in a place longer than a year or two. Keep that in mind. And then the other thing is that even though both of you are in different areas, you're both people who are solving big problems, such as making sure things are on deadline and everybody has everything that they need, but then also bringing in people. You're making sure that you have talent. So I think it's so surprising. It's not even surprising, it's just interesting to me as an outsider to hear two different perspectives, but see exactly how they connect to one another and make a studio run. So that's amazing to me.
I think that's a really great. No, I think that's a really great observation. I think it's easy for people to forget that it's a people business at the end of the day. Like it comes down to talents, how we empower them, how we give them the tools to be able to grow and succeed, and to be able to trust themselves and push themselves to grow. And that's so fun. That's the most fun part of the job, I think.
It seems fun. I'm in awe of what you all do. Honestly, to be on this end and see how international studios are scaling and changing the way we think about video games. And I know it's very US centric to think that, hey, it's all in the US, like we matter. But to see that, you know what, no, that's not the case, and shattering that expectation is also helping people understand gaming isn't just this thing that's in the US, it's global, and it's growing, and it's something that everybody can be a part of. So it's just, I'm excited over here, learning all of these things. So I would love to know how you both would describe allyship and diversity, and how important is it in gaming when there are so many voices that aren't always visible in studios or games?
Awesome. Lalitha, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I think in the terms of allyships and diversity is right now more common. We hear it more often. But if you look at a few years ago, I don't think that people even know these kind of terms, or even know this is something that doable or happen. So for me, I will just say that I will describe it as a very simple connection. Like I say, how it's all about people, right? So you have to see the allyship as a friendship. It's like a way you build the relationship, but in a professional setting. It's not like your common friendship that, like your best friend. That's a different, but you also need to have that kind of friendship in your professional life, which will help you to actually understand about what is important for people to be in these positions or in this role to be qualified to be as an ally, right? So what is important, because not everyone is able to speak up or believe they actually can share their thoughts, or they actually have a room actually to talk about it. And I think with this allyships is actually I would say that the 4 things that we actually can do is ask the questions. This person will listen and they will show up and even speak up for them, right? They empower them or show the path for these people. So that's how I'll describe that. And why it's important, because I think it's a bridge that builds relationship and empower for changing the culture, not only in Streamline, but also I think in a worldwide organization, it should adopt that, because I think that's the first step, bridging that gap, what you have with the people among the organization. So yeah, that's how I see. And also bringing the diversity to the table is actually mainly is just to say, with the pandemic and everything that happened right now, you can see how most company or most organizations are globally, including Streamline, are now in the global. We have in Colombia and we have in US, and we also people working from Europe and all that, right? So all these things actually connecting everyone together and just bringing different perspectives that we can learn from each other. And that's why it's very important.
I fully agree, Lalitha. To answer this question, I personally think of allyship and diversity as equity. So active allyship isn't about doing what's most fair or doing what's the most logical in situations or creating a state of equalness. It's about creating equity, balancing out differences with people, difference with the culture, difference of a background and understanding, difference of thoughts, like what Lalitha mentioned. And it's hard.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to gear towards what we logically think is right or what's fair. And we only come from the background of what we know. And that's why it's so easy to get equality and diversity wrong. And that's why we have coined the term, and it sometimes comes with some doubt and a lot of questions about, is this really real? Like, why are we always talking about it and nothing's really done? And I think that comes from there, because it's a really difficult thing to do. And it's acknowledging that people are different, and it's acknowledging that I don't know everything, and it requires a lot of listening skills and empathy, which is very hard skills to have. And those are the skills that we emphasize, the leaders over here in Streamline as well, because it's super important as you're working with different studios across the world to really just come in from the stance of understanding, but also be able to push the agenda forward so that we're not stuck in the loop of what's the most balanced, what's the most fair, because at the end of the day, it's a business and we need to move forward. Personally think that's allyship. And to the question of whether it's important, yes, it's super, super important. Not just because it's the right thing to do, which it is, but from the business standpoint as well. It's what's profitable. It's what makes you win in the long term. And I think you mentioned a very interesting point at the start, Robin, about not all places are toxic. Not all places are a place where you stay for 1 or 2 years. And I think it comes down to the mindset, especially on the management and the ownership layer as well, of, are you in it for your long term, or are you just in it for the cash grab? Yeah. And unfortunately, if you're not looking at it in the long term, you're not able to make the right choices that doesn't make sense right now, but makes sense down the line. So some of the things that we do here is that we understand that media has a huge influence. And I think it's super important that we start getting more people into games, whether it's the game development or just playing games. And that's why we set up studios in places like Colombia or Malaysia, so that we can engage with the community and turn more populations into gamers, because then we get a larger pool of people to work with, that larger, more diverse people to work with. So for me, that's diversity and that's equality.
I think both of these answers are great. And I think one of the things that I keep hearing from people, and I'm even one of those people who do this, is, oh, the gaming industry, they're more toxic than other places. They lack diversity and allyship more than other places. But in reality, it's technically everywhere you work, there's going to be some kind of issue with allyship and diversity. But to hear that both of you, and I'm sure that this is Streamline as a whole, think of allyship and diversity in these different ways, and that there are actual processes in place to make sure that, yeah, both of you are hired, but that you're supported, that things are actually going along, that you feel like the work that you're doing actually matters, is so important. Because I find that there's a lot of performative allyship that happens where it's like, yeah, we're going to put you in these positions and then let you flounder and fall, and it's, oh, what do I do now? Like, how do I survive in this position? It becomes a very toxic cycle. But then you love video games, so then you go to another place and it just keeps going and going. And so it's just so nice. I know I don't want to harp on what I said earlier, but it's so nice to see that there's, like, everything you're saying, I almost feel like it's fake. I'm like, how is it possible? Because you can see from the way you all are talking, and then just the fact of your tenure, and then how things are growing, that everything you're saying is the truth. It is happening. It is real. And I'm sure there's probably some issues here and there, but that's normal with any place. But it's nice to see that there are people who are putting women in charge, letting you do your job because you were hired for it, you qualified for it, but then also giving you the room to actually feel like they're supported, that things are happening. So it's just
not token.
I'm like, yeah, yes, exactly. You're not a token. That's what I love. That's what I love. I'm still over here like, how is this true? But it's nice. It's very nice to see. And it gives me hope as somebody who wants to work full time in the gaming industry, just to see that can exist. And I don't have to, if I do get in positions that are toxic, I don't have to live with that. I can actually go find a place that's not toxic and look at their practices and the people they hire to prove that they actually mean what they say.
And what I would love about working with people like Lalitha, and we have a lot of people like her in the studio as well, is that we don't tolerate yes. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your show. We don't tolerate BS. There's no bullshit. Yeah. If we see that something wrong, we're gonna push it. And it's not Not to say that we don't raise problems, but when we see problems, we raise them together with what we want done out of those problems. And I think that that's what makes our culture here non-toxic, is that people who are raising problems are also ready to solve that problem and say, you know what, this has already happened. This is a problem. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to cry about it, or are we going to move forward and do something about it?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think to add to what Yaji said, right? It's not like you have feelings that, oh, can I voice this or not? But it's more like it's happened naturally. Like even if I have a problem, like when I was doing HR at one point, when I want to discuss about certain issues that might come to my attention, it didn't stop me like, oh, can I talk this to Yaji? Or can I bring this up to him? It's that it happened naturally that I know that, okay, I want to escalate this. So let's face this together. Like, how do we can do this? So how do we can do? Not all the conversation gonna be easy. Not all the situations you've been experienced before, right? But it's all, and sometimes it's just a first time for everybody. But you're just gonna be in a room, talk about it, discuss about it, brainstorm about it. I think it's just happened naturally in a process. That because we have been in that culture for a longer period of time, and we had that feeling, and we're secure to bring that up.
Awesome. I think this is a great segue to this next question. And when I ask it, I'm not saying tell me your business. You just give me broad strokes. So before Streamline, you've probably experienced a range of allyship and diversity experiences, some good, some bad. What experience made you decide that wherever you go and what you do should be centered on allyship and diversity in your career?
I can take this on first. I've been working in two different industries before gaming industry. One was a shipment and the other one is the banking industry. So I'm not going to name it, but then I think the longest that I have been working was in the banking industry, and that's been a tough, I will say that was a bad experience for me. And like I said, we never know about this allyship or diversity. The knowledge about it was very lack. But one thing that I know was that it's been tough. I feel I didn't get an equal opportunity just because I'm an Indian and then I'm a woman and I'm still new in the industry. Even 2 years is considered new, so it's not like a fresh grad. I have experience, but then I also didn't get the equal opportunity of other people's like non-woman or in other races. So I have been facing these operations for quite a period of time. But whenever I was in the situation where I do not know what to do or like how do I solve this? Or like what is happening to me? I feel like I don't have anyone that advocate to me at a point.
Yeah.
So that's what I realized that, and I actually quit from the job, and that's where I actually moved to Streamline. When I moved to Streamline, the first thing that I have in mind, like I already experienced that. And I do not want that to happen to me. I already know what I want. I already know what kind of environment I want. What is my ideal working relationship that I'm looking for. I'm no longer a fresh grad. I'm no longer like I have no idea what is the industry. When you talk of, it was a very good thing that you brought out about the toxic environment. I was in a toxic environment for a longer period of time. So when I moved to Streamline, that's wow. Okay, is it really real? Is it really real? That's what I feel. So is it really real? I want to be here. I want to continue to work here. Even though when I started my career, I don't even have experience as an operation, because clearly I'm from finance and jumping into operations and HR. That's not even something that I even imagined that I will be in at that point. And when I took the chance, because the company itself that attracted me the most, and see that opportunity was given to me, even if I don't have the background, but they believe me that I actually can do something in the role. And then that's the first thing, right? The trust that they have, even for the first stage of interviews and when I joined, the trust is continuous. I think that's what made me believe that from what I experienced in a previous job, that's something that I will never want anyone to experience here. And I will not going to be the person to do the same. I know how it is, how mentally tough, and I'm lucky enough that I come up from that and have organizations that I join and I love right now. Not everybody is lucky enough, but it's time for us to actually share that awareness journey.
Love that.
I love that. For me, I don't have as interesting of a story as Lalitha did, but I was in quite a number of different part-time jobs before I joined Streamline, and it wasn't like extremely toxic or anything, but it's always struck to me that work is work, life is life, and like I have to be someone else that I'm not during work hours, and then once that's done, I can be myself. That's how I always viewed work before coming into the industry and meeting how things are here. And yes, there are a lot of improvements that are still needed in the industry, But I think I love the way that we celebrate differences and opinions, because that's literally what makes the creative process creative. And I think that kind of translates into cultures of different studios as well, where they're a lot more open to different opinions and different backgrounds. Yeah, and I don't feel like I have to be someone else that I'm not at work and then be that person afterwards. And I think that's a key difference that I'm seeing between non-games and games, also non-games and Streamline from my personal experience.
Yeah. I feel like I just, the experience working with WIGI versus my full-time job, I'm a completely different person. But with WIGI, I feel completely whole because I'm not judged. I can be as nerdy or as non-nerdy as I need to be. And as long as I'm getting my job done and having fun, it works. And so it's great that you're experiencing that. Now, this question may be a little bit more for Lalitha, just letting you know up front. But and obviously, Yeji, you can jump in too. But I would love to know, how do you think Streamline defines allyship and diversity, and how does the studio address this by hiring diverse people? And when diverse, I'm not simply talking about race. I know we immediately go there, but gender, class, disability, sexual orientation, all of that. How do you all address that?
I think firstly, it's actually, I will say that it lead by example. That will start from our CEO himself, that he's actually very vocal about all the marginalized in the gaming industry. And he lead us by example, how he supported or encouraged others to do the same. He's also part of the WIGI board. He's an Allyship committee chair. That's already shows how he's setting the bar out there, and how he actually showing us what we can do, or as a studio, and other than that, just hiring diverse people, but more towards the actions, right? So also Streamline obviously supports any recommendations or suggestions that have been brought forward internally. And we also actually have the various platforms that actually help us to actually create this kind of relationship or discussions, that constantly push us also to participate in this kind of events that motivate us to encourage, or we need to be more vocal about this and show people that this is something that is doable and is manageable. Empower people that this is how we want to be as an organization. And on top of it, I think one of the examples to say that, and we say that CEO lead by the example, it's also we're not limited that this kind of initiative is only must be done by females, right? It's not only Yaji or I that can do this, but we open it to everyone. In recently, we have the Gamescom Asia, where we have our male is that being mentor for the part of the events as well. So all that things actually being a very great examples on how we actually bring this forward to everyone.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Streamline it's not like Streamline is this is how we define, it's not like we release a statement on this is how we define allyship and diversity, but based on what I've observed during the years here, and based on how I think the company sees it, I think we see allyship as emotional intelligence, willing to listen to people, because that's what it comes down to, understanding that not everyone's the same, and that you have to listen, you have to read between the lines, listen to what's not being said to truly understand what they're going through. And for the diversity, I think you nailed a really important point. We just tend to go straight to race when we talk about diversity, but it really is a diversity of thoughts, right? And that comes from individuals' path that they have gone through in the past, from their background, their education. It's not like we need a degree or anything, but having people from different walks of life, I think that adds to our diversity and our flexibility in the ability to think. So that's how I think. I have observed how people resonate to think about allyship and diversity internally. Yeah.
Awesome. One thing I just want to bring up that I think is just super important when we talk about diversity and allyship is just broadening our perspectives by talking to different people and understanding different people as well in the industry. I know that I'm guilty of this too. I know we tend to group up with the people that we're most comfortable with, but you don't actually get I don't believe, I'll just say that in my opinion, you don't actually get much out of that by just sticking with the same people. How do you get to know about different perspectives and support and things and issues that we can help out with if we're not doing that? So I find it strange that a lot of other companies are okay with perpetuating the sameness across the board rather than realizing the diversity of thought, of class, gender, race, disability, so on and so forth, enriches everything that you do when you actually believe in and hire these kind of people. Just want to throw that out there. Everything you all said, I'm like in total agreement with, but I hope that the people who are watching this also recognizes that the things that you create, whether it's a studio or it's a group of people that you're playing games with or whatever it may be, just make sure you're open to getting all forms of thought and people in those spaces. It just makes it better. That's at least me.
Totally agree. And it's a conscious thing we have to do, and it's tiring sometimes. And this is something that we're internally working on in Streamline as well, to make sure that during the interview process, we don't hire people just because we like them. That usually signals that the person thinks the same way as you do, and that's not helping with the diversity conversation or adding diversity to your studio as well. But it's human nature. Like we like people who think like us, and we like to be understood. We like to be empathize. Don't be afraid or don't be ashamed if that's what you've been doing, because that's natural, but it's a conscious decision that you have to make to establish allyship and diversity within your group, like you said, whether it's a studio or a group of people playing games.
Absolutely. So now we're going to shift away from Streamline, and I would love to know a little bit more about your perspectives on some of these things. So what are some practical steps that anyone can take to begin to shape studios, gaming, or other spaces, whatever it may be, effectively so that diversity and allyship are centered and celebrated? One of the things I just brought up was just literally making sure you bring people who aren't like you in these spaces. Are there other practical things we can just throw in there to help people as they create and develop their own spaces?
Okay, I can go first on this one. I would say 3 things. Firstly, watch the numbers, because we have our own perception of what our diversity situation is in the studio. Especially if you work in just certain departments where the ratio might be a little bit better, it's difficult to see an overview of the group, whether it's a studio or whoever you're working with. So I would say just get an objective number to give you an objective score on where you are in terms of diversity. Again, don't have to be feeling ashamed of it, but it's just something for you to work from. Mm-hmm. Easy to get a wrong perception of where you really are on that scale. Second thing ties into what we just talked about, which is the interview process. But also after you have hired in the diverse hires that you brought in, talk to them to get their feedback on what the process, how they felt about the process, and at which point did they feel discouraged or would prevent them from applying or pursuing their application further, because those are the blockers that you remove, and you're going to get more of those people that you literally just hired. So it could be language, it could be requirements, it could even be where the ads are shown, right? Where you're showing your ads, where you're showing your recruitment ads. So interview, recruitment process, reviewing, that's the second one. The third one is more tricky, and it's not as straightforward to do. And it's ensuring to create a culture where people pull each other up. Yeah. Having that instilled that if you got help, you need to help others. It's not like you take all and be like, yes, grown, I've nurtured, I'm now off to my own path, adios, hey, bye everyone. It's like sharing knowledge and experience is making sure that's in the culture, and making sure that people love helping each other without feeling like they're stepping on and exchanging ideas. I don't want to go into what Streamline does, but one of the things that I really love is that where people just jump on whatever platform you're using and just jump on calls and share what they've learned that week. Hey, I found this really cool thing. I just wanted to share with you guys. During lunchtime, we call them lunch and learn. So things like that, where it's more tricky to create because it needs to come from people not feeling threatened and people feeling like they have the security within to be able to share and not be chucked out because, oh, you're not needed anymore. I have the other guy who knows exactly what you're doing. So that level of security, it needs to start from there. That's why it's a lot more tricky, because it has to do with human tendency and fears and emotions. But once you have that, you're gonna be able to really thrive as a studio, because you have that system working itself. Once you bring in a diverse hires, they will feel empowered. They will feel like they have someone to go to. And once they reach a point where they're able to share and help another person out, that's really rewarding as a career as well. So that prevents that burnout that we often see in the industry, where you go through junior, like intern, junior, mid, senior, now what? Or lead, now what? Having that cycle of and sharing, I think that really helps with people stay in the industry longer and just stay cool as artists, as programmers, as whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I think
That's amazing.
Yaji's been putting it so well. That's great. But just one thing I want to slide into on top of what Yaji says. She's been talking about the interview process and how what next and all. I think one of the studios, like in general, everyone can do is like to create the transparency of what are the equal opportunities that have in the organization itself. That will be the first step. I think that will help a lot, because it's not about only you in a certain role and that's how you grow in your role, junior, mid, senior, what next, right? If they have avenues where they can check, or if I'm an artist today, but can I move to program? If I want to move to programming, so can I take what are the courses I should take? And on that also one of the part that we can create for these studios to actually how we can actually shape all these things. It's all like a little things, and also to say not everyone's ready, not everyone have the knowledge about this, but I think a simple step like a one by one will help a lot and create the avenues. And even when you have this thought and you're already looking into it, and maybe down the road you can set a goal, maybe in 3 years or maybe in 2 years, I want to reach certain goals and certain steps that I want to take. That's already one of the things that the organizations can take and look into to begin this.
I think I heard two things that just popped into my head that are super important, I think are connected. One, exactly what you were just saying, Lalitha, about growth and the ability to see different pathways, that you're not stuck in one place, that you can become whatever you want to be. And I think that also connects to what Yaji was talking about with not feeling threatened, because I feel like people feel threatened when they don't know what else exists for them, that they feel like they're stuck, and so they have to hoard all of that information. But you don't have to if you are working for a place that gives you the opportunity to move around and explore and develop yourself, and know that the place you started doesn't have to be the place that you're going to end. And I don't think I see that enough, not even beyond the video game industry, to be honest. Like, you just don't know where you're going to end up. So to hear that those practices exist, lunch and learns, and you're like, I learned this today, even if it's like some random, this is what I learned, you need to know about this. I think that's exciting, because and to be clear, I started like way back in the day, not even way back in the day, just a couple of years ago, actually, as a career coach. And so in my head, I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. I love professional development. I love when people are teaching other people about things that they've learned, because how else are you going to grow? How else are you going to do your work effectively, or even have other sides of how things work in the industry from other people's perspectives for you to do your job effectively if you don't? So it's just
I love it.
Exciting.
Why reinvent the wheel, right? Like when you can benefit from each other.
Yes. And I hate when people leave and there's information like, I don't even know the right word for it, like maybe drain, or you just don't have it anymore. It's gone because the person's gone. And like, and in some respects, I see why people do that. But I think it, again, comes from this fear of being threatened and not knowing what to do. And then it just gets perpetuated. So it's just nice to know that it's just, there are places that exist. Even for me, I'm like more so than a few viewers, that I'm like, I can find places like that. It's amazing. And not to take up any more of your time, we're going to actually go to the very last question. And I'll expand this just a little bit, because I realize that it's a little broad in a way. But what advice would you give other women, femme, and non-binary people, whomever in those categories? What advice would you give them on getting positions, not just at a high level, but just putting their feet in the water to get some experience and or find studios or places that are truly there to support them? What could they do? What should they do? That's a very difficult question to answer, however you want to. Everyone,
That is
even
a
if they're
very,
like
very
practical,
good question.
even if it's practical steps on, this is a red flag. This is a red flag. Don't go into this situation if you see it. Like anything, even if it's one tip, because I need it for myself too.
Yeah, yeah. Let me try to summarize it. I think those who are aiming to be in high-level positions are super ambitious people, myself and Lalitha included, in yourself, I'm sure, Robin too. And it's really easy to get sucked into the mindset. Like, it's literally what we just talked about, right? That the pie is somehow limited and then we have to fight each other. And that if you see someone else getting opportunities, it's somehow preventing you from being there or getting it. And I think that's one thing that had to change for that threat to go away, for that feeling of loneliness to go away, because it does get lonely the higher you go up, because you have very little people who can truly empathize with what you're going through and the decisions you have to make for the mass, right? Because as you go up, you're not only talking about 3 people in your team, 5 people in your team, 10 people in your team that you know by name. You're talking about 200 people, 300 people that you have relationships with and individually, but you cannot make decisions for individuals. And that's really tough, right? So changing the mindset and also really understanding why you're pursuing the high level position, like what drives you to it. And I think that's super important, because like sometimes we just want it because, and that's, I think, number one way to get burnt out, because you're just like, this is so tough. Like I had to just make a decision that affects a lot of people. And of course, sometimes it hurts, like making tough decisions. And that if you don't have the why that you can remind yourself of, like, okay, why am I doing this, to reassure yourself and to really know where you're going, it can really just not end well. So that's my one advice.
That's a good one. From my end, this is something that I think is not easy to put away. I think most people might struggle with is there's always a conception. So I will say sometimes people think that they don't fit to the high level position because maybe they are not extrovert enough, or they're not able to carry themselves in a way like how they look up to their mentors. For example, oh, my mentor is amazing, she can speak there, she can this, but I won't be able. So I think that's the first thing that they have to take out from their mind. Never doubt your abilities before you see yourself, or not without trying it. I think that's the first thing that I will advise, that remember that everyone's capabilities are not same. Everyone is not always gonna come with the same. If everybody's same, we're just gonna have like same type of leaders, right? So it's the same output, same input, or same result that we're gonna look at. But that's why we have different types of people. Then they need to believe in themselves that they actually can fit and be why they want to be in that positions and what they can contribute to that position. So like how they can build their self to be in that position. So first, don't doubt your abilities and never compare yourself to anyone, because everybody's journey is different. Someone can be introvert but still can go for the tech talk show and have a very fabulous talk, but they want to do that. But they know that but
find
then
your
when
own
they go
leadership
to
style.
Exactly. When you go to your personal space, they're completely different because that's their personal space. So they have all these things. So just don't misunderstand about the ideal leadership, but instead find one within yourself. And you are the first person that's going to stop yourself from growing. So never doubt about yourself. That's one of the tips I can give.
I love that.
That's
Where were you when I
amazing.
was 20 years old, Lalitha?
I didn't do that to myself as well. I was 20, but I learned.
Oh my gosh. Like I immediately heard Ted talk and I'm like, no. Like I feel like I would, the day that ever happens, something has changed in me, because that is like the biggest fear of mine, having to talk in front of a bunch of people with a camera. Technically, this is a little different.
I was just gonna say, you're doing
different.
the series, you're leading it like a boss, and I don't know what you're talking
This is
about.
completely different. Standing on a stage and having to do that, I'm like, I'm sure with practice it would work, but then I'm like, what in the world would I even talk about? Whatever. Anyway, it's not about me. It's not about me. But your answers were amazing, and things that I actually didn't think about. This one is harder said than done, is not comparing yourself. That's hard. I think we all struggle with that. I know I do. I continuously struggle with it. And then also, G, by what you were saying earlier of short-term memory. That's what happens with me.
No worries.
Darn it.
Pie is limited
Well,
and no understanding why you do things.
yes, making those big decisions and
Yeah.
also understanding why you're applying for that big level job, that big job. I don't have answers for those. I don't have answers for those, but those are things that I guess, not that you need to have them before you apply to those jobs, but knowing that I've actually never thought about either of those things also lets me know maybe that's not where I need to be in life yet, because having to make those decisions that affect all of these people below you sucks, even when it's the more difficult ones. And I'm like, I don't think I have the heart. Yeah, I don't think I have the heart for it. I'm like, hold up. This isn't for me. So then I would then go back to compare myself to other people and what they like. It's so funny how both of your things are just like connecting in so many ways. I'm like, I would freak out.
Journal to break that cycle and it's a refinement process. You don't know it all from the start, right? You try it and I'm like, that hurt. I hated it. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, and I know I'll freak out the day that I do get in that position, but I will come back to this and remember what you both said so that I can get myself together and hopefully be the best executive or high level position or whatever it may be when that day comes, I can be. So I want to thank you both so much for being here. Let me do this quick little outro for everybody out there. And yeah, let's do it. There are a variety of ways to become an ally and promote inclusion in video games. A good starting point is to make sure you're recruiting the best people, but there are plenty of other options, such as increasing representation of people in video games. You've learned what it takes to do this work, but also practical steps you can take to make it happen. This is Open World Dialogue, sponsored by Maximum Games. I'm Robin, signing off. Bye and happy gaming. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.